After the Syrian uprising, Israel reportedly seized the Syrian side of Mount Hermon. Why is that important? Because it is an infamous mountain, supposed to be where the gates of hell are, according to Jesus, and also where the watchers or fallen angels were supposed to have come down in the days of Noah. What ancient ruins of the watchers did Israel come into possession of this month? And what impact is that going to have on Israel? For one, they seized the territory, including the castle of Nimrod, while the United Nations have a headquarters built on the top of this mountain protecting an ancient temple that includes a stele or an inscription in stone from the watchers themselves. Today, we're going to discuss these structures and the role they may play in the end times, including the possible casting down of Satan and his angels. This is Bible teacher Nelson Walters, and you may not be aware of the history of this mountain. It is the likely location where Jesus once stood, saying the gates of hell shall not prevail against his church. It likely is also the location where 6 days later, Jesus was transfigured and met Elijah and Moses. 6 days. That's a very interesting number. Why did the Bible include that? Does it have something to do with the rapture and the timing of the rapture? We'll see later today. So what is this mountain? Mount Hermon straddles the borders of Israel, Syria, and Lebanon. It is a site of immense historical, spiritual, and geopolitical importance. Militarily, it's a buffer zone between Israel and her enemies to the north, Syria and Turkey. That's the reason there's a United Nations outpost there, and that's also the reason that Israel seized this new territory. It is also referred to in biblical texts and apocryphal traditions. It may be one of the most evil sites on the face of the earth, potentially a portal between heaven and earth. Jesus calls it the gates of hell. There was probably a reason. After all, things come in and out of gates. And now, as we said, we have Israel and the United Nations possessing these locations. And we have to ask once again, what will be the impact on them just being there? In the book of Enoch, Mount Hermon is identified as a place where a group of rebellious angels descended in the days of Noah. This is the same event that marked a pivotal moment in biblical history, which gave rise to the Nephilim, a hybrid race of giants mentioned in Genesis 6, 1 through 4, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and they bore children to them. Now, in this previous video, the second most popular video in the history of the Nelson Walters channel, by the way, we discussed the ancient temple that the United Nations controls at the top of this mountain. One with an inscription in it by the watchers themselves that indicates their pledge to one another to do this horrible thing, to cohabit with women. At the end of this video, we'll provide you a link to that previous video so that you can watch it when this one is over and discover the translation of that inscription and the meaning of that temple controlled by the UN. But that is not the only location of prominence. The New Testament adds further weight to the mountain's spiritual significance in Matthew 16:18. Jesus declared that the gates of Hades, which he claimed were there, would not prevail against his church. The conversation took place at the base of Mount Hermon, a site known for its pagan worship, an area that housed shrines and temples, including one dedicated to the Greek god Pan. A large cave at that site was believed to be the gateway to the underworld, or Hades, earning it that nickname, the Gates of Hell. Of course, the fact that this is also the site where the Watchers came down lended credence to that name. And of course, that seems to be the reason that Jesus chose that site, so he could announce to those evil spirits that he was there and he was in charge. Jesus' statement about the gates of hell implies not only the church's resilience against that opposition, but also that it has an offensive role in breaking down spiritual barriers. It reassures believers of their ultimate victory in Christ. Now, Mount Hermon's association with the Watchers, and their rebellion in Enoch and its reputation as a place of pagan worship, Pan's temple, provided a really fitting location for Jesus to have made this bold proclamation. By declaring victory at this site, the gates of hell, Jesus symbolically asserted his authority over all these spiritual powers. But Jesus wasn't done at that point. After Peter confessed Jesus as the Messiah, Jesus then began for 6 days to teach them openly about his impending suffering, death, and resurrection. That's Matthew 16:21. This revelation just shocked the disciples as it challenged their expectation of a conquering Messiah, and it took place, like we said, over 6 days. The 6 days served as a period of anticipation and reflection, a bridge from Peter's confession to the climactic revelation of Jesus in all his divine glory on that mountaintop. Was this period a picture of the tribulation? We'll get to that. In eschatological thought, the tribulation, is often considered a 7-year period, Daniel 9:27, Revelation 11 through 13. And the first half, 3.5 years, focuses on increasing global turmoil, while the second half is the reign of the Antichrist, sometimes called the Great Tribulation, at least most of the second half. And since Jesus returns after the sixth seal, but before all the trumpets and all the bowls, it's pretty obvious he doesn't return at the end. Jesus' return, then, often is understood to occur after the 6th year, or upon the beginning of the 7th year or Sabbath year of the tribulation. And at the transfiguration, Jesus' glory is unveiled to Peter, James, and John, giving them a glimpse of his divine nature and the kingdom to come. And it happens after 6 days. This event foreshadows the ultimate revelation of his glory when he returns to establish his reign on earth after 6 years. Matthew 24:30, Revelation 1:7. So, Mount Hermon is the site of substantial spiritual conflict, and it's reflected in a number of buildings that seem to impart the evil that has taken place there. Ruins of ancient temples that Israel now has control over. Nimrod's castle is one of the most prominent landmarks on Mount Hermon. The castle was built during the Crusader period, back in the 12th century, long after Nimrod, but on the site of a former fortress. And Arab legends attributed the fortress to Nimrod, the mighty hunter of the Bible, who, after the separation of languages at the Tower of Babel, is said to have retreated there. It is claimed that Nimrod threw Abraham into a fiery furnace on this very site because he believed in only one God. Of course, Abraham survived, if that story is true, and Nimrod is said to have been imprisoned in the castle he built. So that's one of the things they took over. Mount Hermon is dotted with Roman temples and shrines also that reveal its significance during the Roman Empire as a place of pagan worship. These structures provide evidence of the mountain's role as the center for pagan worship in that area. Archaeologists have identified multiple Roman-era worship sites, many located at the base of the mountain near the so-called gates of hell. Additionally, one of the most remarkable Roman-area sites is found on the mountain top. That's the one controlled by the UN. Mount Hermon continues to play a critical role in contemporary geopolitics due to its strategic location and its symbolic importance. These pagan sites are now in the control of UN and Israel, as we said. In recent days, Israel seized the Syrian-controlled side of the mountain, citing security concerns, and they were legit concerns, and the need to maintain a buffer zone. The seizure, of course, has heightened tensions in the region, with Syria and its allies viewing the move as a violation of their sovereignty. And atop Mount Hermon lies that UN outpost we talked about, established as part of the United Nations Disengagement Observer Force, UNDOF, UNDOF. This outpost has been operational since '74, and one of the things they monitor is the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Syria following the Yom Kippur War. The other thing they monitor is the site where the Watchers came down. As we said before, they control the temple at the top of the mountain, which is supposed to be the exact site where the Watchers descended. Now, of greatest interest in these sites is the fact that Mount Hermon is associated with gateways or portals to other dimensions. These beliefs are rooted in ancient traditions. They go way back, and they are reinforced by Jesus' own words when he called them the gates of hell. So the question is, how will Mount Hermon figure into the events of the end times? Will this be the site where Satan and his fallen angels are finally cast down, when they lose the war in heaven that they are currently fighting with Michael the archangel, the one found in Revelation 12:7-9? Well, that's a bit of speculation, but there is no more likely place on the face of the earth for that casting down to happen. The mountain's historical association with rebellion and its symbolic ties to the gates of hell as a portal between heaven and earth make it the most plausible location for such an event. Also, its inclusion in Israel and next to a UN facility make it even more so. But Revelation 12 does not explicitly link Satan's fall to Mount Hermon or any other specific location. But let's imagine that he is cast down there. Revelation 12:7-10 describes a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he, Satan, was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth and his angels with him. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury because he knows that his time is short. So Satan initially becomes furious and vengeful that he is being cast down. His first act after being cast down will be to pursue the woman in Revelation 12:13. When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. This woman is usually interpreted as Israel, the nation through which the Messiah, the male child, was born. If Satan is cast down on Mount Hermon, from there, he could orchestrate his attacks on Israel and the broader world using the mountain's historic and symbolic connections to a rebellion as a base of operations. This is especially true if Satan and his angels are cast down in physical form. Mount Hermon's nearness to Israel, would position him then to strategically assist the man of sin in sitting in the temple of God and assist him in attacking Israel. Now, will the United Nations and Israel hasten that demise now they control these pagan worship sites on Mount Hermon? Think about it. Both groups are risking leaving open spiritual doorways that could influence their collective morality and faith. The historical association of Mount Hermon with idolatry might inspire participation in occult practices, and it's just a downhill slide from there. The Bible frequently warns against Israel's entanglement with idolatry. Just look at Hosea 4:12-13, Ezekiel 8:6, and a dozen other chapters. Holding dominion over sites of rebellion without addressing their spiritual significance could hasten Israel's departure from its covenant responsibilities, making them more susceptible to spiritual deception during the tribulation. So is it any surprise that it happened now? And of course, the UN is already secular, and that nature could just render it blind or easily co-opted into participating with Satan's plans. Mount Hermon's reputation as a gateway or a portal to other realms makes it a candidate for manipulation. And that manipulation, as we said, could be through archaeological excavations, scientific research, or occult Luciferian ceremonies on Mount Hermon. And those could be catalysts for unlocking the latent spiritual forces already tied to the site's history. The UN technically could unlock a portal there and assist Satan to escape from Michael to the earth. With so much centered on Mount Hermon, especially the temple controlled by the UN, I bet you want to learn more about our second most popular video. So click right here to keep watching and discover what the UN is hiding on that mountain, what the inscription says that the Watchers left behind, and how this could play out in our future. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.